Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast.
Listen, do what you gotta do to keep us around, okay?
Welcome to episode 4 of Off the Cuff. I'm Darren Chohan.
And I'm Matt Butler. Before we get into today's topic, we'd like to thank our special guest for episode 2 and 3, Zachary Courtemanche, who provided great insight into COVID-19 vaccination policies in the workplace and the ramifications of that, not only within workplaces, but within unions, and how far these policies have gone and the ramifications for those. And I think it was great insight. And given that COVID has taken over everybody's life in the last 2 years, it was a great topic, and it was a great discussion about it, I think, anyways.
We'd also like to thank our listeners and our viewers, for tuning in, taking the time to watch the content we're putting out. We noticed that our last episode, of course, got a lot of traction because it's an important topic. And, with exciting content and with relevant, timely topics, we're hoping that we can continue to grow. And, we noticed that a lot of people have liked the last video. We can encourage you to just continue to like, follow, and subscribe, because
do what you gotta do to keep us around, okay?
Yeah. I think that's our motto. That's the reason why we do this. And I'm really happy to continue doing this. And I think
that's great. That's great.
We should. So, today we're going to be talking about a really fun topic. And it was teased a little bit in our last episode, the unreasonable neighbor. And so we're going to unpack that a little bit and find out what makes somebody an unreasonable neighbor.
It's also important to remember that everything we discuss today or any sort of future podcasts or even subsequent podcasts, that is not to be construed as independent legal advice or even legal advice. We're just sort of discussing legal topics. And if you do have an issue, you should retain counsel or at least discuss it with a lawyer. And our full disclaimer is at the description below, or you can find it on our website as well.
Thanks. And with these neighbor disputes come very fun problems, from a legal perspective, and also just from a, pop culture perspective. The cases that we've picked today to focus on have just been cases that were in the media.
They're definitely interesting reads.
Yeah. And, they stem from somebody doing something, what they believe harmless. They're building playgrounds for their children, a pirate ship, a boat. And
it's so cool that two main stories are boats.
In Toronto, of all places, right?
Of course it's in Toronto.
I guess small spaces, big dreams.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Small place, big dreams. Yeah, that's our new motto, all right? Jeez.
Right?
Right.
Well, they don't have a lot of space.
No, that's why they build pirate ships. Yeah.
We're in Sudbury, right? So we have all the space you can imagine. Yeah. We don't build boats, we ride them.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
Okay. So with that, we also have one case that deals with fences because, of course...
Neighbors got fences, right?
Neighbors got fences,
yeah.
I mean, you ever watch Home Improvement?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm 47, dear.
I watched it. I'm only 35.
I watched it too.
I know,
I'm younger than you.
I would watch it again. Wilson and his fence. That's all I think about when we talk about these fence disputes. Your neighbor, on the other side.
Sure.
But... that being said, fences can get nasty.
Fences can get nasty, and especially when two people or two owners have disputes in which they can't really communicate about, or there's some serious... Sometimes there is malicious intent in some of these cases, and it becomes something that becomes a simple dispute, can become long and very emotional and very expensive litigation.
Yeah, and you also... see, on that thread of thought, these fence disputes can actually alter water drainage and can alter, lots of things. So there are definite real problems that can come as a result of these fences. So that's why we chose to focus on this topic today, because I think that everybody has a neighbor, generally speaking, unless you live in the middle of the country.
It is one of these things as well, is that as much as we've made some jokes about it, but it is an issue that we do get significant phone calls about with prospective clients about
Yeah.
neighbor disputes, just whether it be a positioning of a fence, whether it be a positioning of a driveway, what's an easement, what's a right of way, these types of things. And then as far as there's water drain, like you said, there's drainage issues and water's flowing into my property, potentially into my basement. What do you do then?
I've actually fielded a call where somebody was complaining about a tree overhanging the fence.
But the thing is, nobody knows what the ramifications of that. What are your, because we think of that and we go, well, just talk to your neighbor about it. But what if your neighbor goes, no, it's a beautiful tree. It could be sometime crabapple tree, and these crab apples are going into my yard. I'm mowing over them. They create flies. Like these are types of things that can just sort of go into greater issues. And if you have two unreasonable people, or even just one unreasonable person, the unreasonable neighbor, it can create some real conflict, and it creates a lot of stress. You are at home where you want to sort of decompress, and you are more stressed because you're creating, or not, you are creating, but there's a potential conflict there. So it becomes an issue.
Yeah, and that's why today I want to talk about it, because especially in our next episode, we're going to get into what you can do or what you could potentially do as somebody facing these issues. But today we're going to focus on just giving some information about the cases that we found and just have some fun with it.
There you go.
And on that note, I think that we take a break.
Let's take a break.
Yeah, and we'll get back into it after we hear from our sponsor.
Sounds good.
This episode of Off the Cuff is brought to you by Weaver Simmons LLP, Northern Ontario's largest full-service law firm with over 30 lawyers and 60 support staff. For over 90 years, the law firm of Weaver Simmons has proudly served the interests of Northern Ontario residents and has built its reputation based on exceptional services to its clients. For more information about the firm, please visit www.weaversimmons.com. The link is provided in the description below.
Welcome back. The first case we want to talk about today is the boat in a treehouse.
Yeah.
And, that case was really neat because this guy built by himself, seemingly, a $30,000 boat treehouse for his kids in his backyard.
We're going to put the link at the bottom. You really should check it out because it really is breathtaking how well constructed this treehouse was. It's a treehouse, just your regular, but it's not a regular treehouse actually. It looks like a full-on boat.
Yeah,
like a sailboat. It's outstanding.
It is actually incredible to actually look at, and it was when I first saw this article and preparing for the episode, I was sad that the city forced him to take it down, and of course don't know the result. We just saw the article, but why it makes it into today's episode is because the neighbor complained about it. And I have the article here, and she said that she felt the boat was overly large, and so she brought that to the city's attention.
And she said that the city should be made aware of it.
Right. And I think he only had it for a week or a couple weeks before it, she complained about it, and the kids had only got to play with it a handful of times before it got complained about. And so it just highlights the importance of a couple things. I think why we wanted to talk about it is because, number one, if you're doing a project like that, you really should take into account the people around you. I think that's something that probably should be done.
Yeah, absolutely. You should. Yeah. Because
a structure like that's going to affect, you have to think sight lines. It's going to affect possible debris falling.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's not a small tree house.
No.
It's not like your regular, 4 walls, the trapdoor underneath. It is a large structure.
Yeah, and it, of course, looking from the pictures, the boat points into his backyard, but there's still an overhang, looks like, over his neighbor's yard, which is probably what stemmed the complaint and the concern from her. And so this gentleman built it without a building permit, which he probably shouldn't have done. Mm-hmm. And then he tried to work with the city to rectify the issue, but we're not really sure what the end result of that was, other than we do have a tweet from the mayor of Toronto.
Yeah.
And I'll read that for you, and we'll put it up on the screen. Looking into #treehouse issue, and this made Twitter. This is the mayor, John Tory. Impressive play space and built with great intentions, but safety and neighborhood impacts have to be considered. And so it just goes to show you that even if you have great intentions, even if it's harmless, city bylaws, zoning bylaws are so important, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before you do anything of that nature, whether it be, a deck, a sunroom, a gazebo, even a pool, you should contact your municipality and discuss potential bylaws and zoning bylaws.
Well, and for you DIYers out there, building permits are very important.
Yeah.
And working with your local building departments in your municipality will do nothing but benefit you. Right? I think that
some people may find it tedious. Some people may find it, a long process. And sometimes you may actually be denied a permit, which then people say, well, why would I want to just be? Well, if you're denied a permit, it's because it's not something that can be done. There are processes that you can then challenge or appeal certain decisions. However, you should still, nevertheless, consult with your municipality
at the very least, right?
At the very least,
if you're working on a project, and this is, I hesitate to say that this is a huge, not an insignificant project. This is a pretty large undertaking.
It cost him $30,000.
I know, and so if
That's
you're going to be
huge.
spending that kind of money and on a whim, in the sense that you don't know if the city's going to get involved or somebody's going to complain about it, if you've not talked about it with your neighbors, it's going to be a problem.
Of course.
And I would be worried if I was the guy building it, that, I'd always have that in the back of my head. But I guess that's just my cynicism as a lawyer.
It's not only that, but back to the topic of the neighbors. If it overhangs people's yards, never mind the municipality and the bylaws, all that. Just the fact that it overhangs it's a large structure. Mm-hmm. We don't know this guy's background, whether he's a carpenter or whether he's, I'm not good with my hands. I don't know about you. You may not be either.
No.
Yeah, imagine you and I build this kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
What if it falls over
into
into someone's yard? God forbid someone is under the structure.
Or even you have the additional liability of children playing on it and it collapsing. There are reasons why building codes exist.
Right. And all it took was
permits
someone
exist.
just saying it was overly large.
Yep, and the city got involved. And so it became a hot social media issue, which is why we're reporting here, which is, for us, interesting and intriguing and a cool story. But at the heart of the story lies, first of all, the neighbor dispute, which is why we're here today.
Yep.
Because the neighbor brought it to the city's attention. And that can happen. We can't stress enough that it will and can happen, and you should be aware of those issues, because to me, that's, it's a game changer.
And it's sad because the kids can't use the treehouse anymore, and it does become sad. But essentially, and I don't want to blame the builder of the tree, because it was a great project, but essentially it's a $30,000 mistake potentially.
Yep.
That's not insignificant, and you can't recover that much.
Well, that could cost you more in legal fees to try to
if you want to fight it,
right, and to try to keep it up. So start at the baseline, consult your bylaws, consult your municipality, and, work with the people that can help you make your project succeed.
Yeah.
Right? At the end of the day, that's what you want. And the people, the stakeholders in that, include your neighbors.
I think it's worth having a discussion with your neighbors, because even if it is, let's say you get a building permit and everything is fine, the legalities of it are that you can build something of a structure of a certain size. That nevertheless can create conflict with your neighbors. Right, whatever that may be, if it's impeding someone's view, they may take issue with that. And then, neighbor disputes don't come from just pure illicit or purely bad intentions. Because this person had the best of intentions. He just wanted to build a treehouse for his kids. That was really cool.
Yeah.
And then it created
This
these
mess.
issues. Yeah.
So that's the first one.
That's a good one.
This is a good one. Researching these episodes is a little bit more fun than I thought it was going to be. And, we're moving into now pirates.
Another ship. Isn't that nuts?
I know. I think that Toronto has a thing for boats, clearly.
Yeah.
And now we've got a gentleman who put a pirate ship in his backyard. And, of course, again, the link to the article will be below. And you should also check this one out, because it is also...
I will say both
Cool.
these guys who built these structures are very talented.
Oh yeah,
individuals.
whatever their day job is.
Yeah.
If this is their side gig, I'm blown away.
Well, the guy in the pirate ship case, the one that we're going to discuss. So the first one, the boat tree house, was from 2016. This next one's from 2020. He actually owned, I think, a pita shop.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He owned, and so this was his.
This
he
is a
just
side
did this
gig.
on the side.
Yeah,
It was outstanding.
and in a time in the world where you can't go to a park,
Yeah, he built it because of the pandemic for his
he-
kids.
puts a pirate ship park in his backyard.
That's so cool.
My dad didn't do that.
No, me neither.
No, I wish. Looking back,
Yeah,
But-
yeah.
here we are.
Our dad is still great though.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. But this guy builds a boat for his kids in the backyard. And we have a complaint come in from somebody anonymous at this time.
Right.
So we're not sure by reading the article if it was a neighbor. But
The neighbor
The
denied
neighbor-
coming forward. Who else would come forward?
exactly.
We're not blaming the neighbor for all. Let's just
Yeah,
get
I
us out of the way. We're not blaming, but come on. Now.
We don't have independent verification that it was the neighbor. But we do know that the homeowners believe it to be the neighbor.
Sure.
And living in the neighborhood, I'm sure they know. And of course, this is in a Toronto suburb, I guess. But the complaint comes in, and then he has to also dismantle it, or he's told by the city to dismantle it.
Yeah, and the complaint in this one was that the structure was too close to the boundary, it was too close to the property line.
Because he had also put, which we failed to mention earlier,
Yeah.
a pool on this pirate deck.
Yeah, so it was the deck, the pool, and a pirate ship.
In the shape of a ship.
In the shape of a ship, and I think it was something like it was within 5 feet of the fence, which in Toronto was as against a municipal bylaw at the time.
Right, which leads us back to the last
Yeah.
case where it's so important to consult your bylaws and your bylaw officers if
Yeah.
you're not sure, because this gentleman put it too close to the fence and he did violate the bylaw. And in the first instance, I don't believe he had a permit either.
He didn't have a permit in this one, no.
And so he worked with the city, and what I think the end result was he moved it. He actually had to take it all apart. He did take it all apart.
Yeah, he had to dismantle
And
it.
then 1 year later, there's another article, which
Yeah.
we'll put in the link below, the success story, where he actually moved it, worked with the city, complied with the bylaws, and now it was found that he didn't need to have building permits because of the square
Yeah, so-
area of the structures.
But it was
didn't
because
need
it was
to-
also in 3 pieces. It was
Right.
3 pieces that the surface area alone wasn't subject to a bylaw, or sorry, it wasn't subject to a permit.
Right.
So he had applied for a permit, got these 3 pieces done, which were in regulation, or within the bylaw, and as such the permit application was canceled.
Right. Yeah. The
Yeah.
city actually issued a statement on this one because, again,
Yeah.
this was a hot topic in
Yeah.
Toronto and social media, and everyone was kind of up in arms because, again, I get back to the point where nobody's thinking about the children, apparently.
Yeah, that's a
And
hot topic for you, huh?
I seem to be on that a lot.
Yeah.
And I do want to report on this one. We have a success story, and his kids are now playing with this pirate ship in their
Yeah.
backyard.
It was in
And-
July 2021 that I think the article came out where
Yeah.
they had rebuilt it,
Yeah.
and the kids were enjoying it.
Yep. And that's great. Everyone's happy. Good result. Happy days. So in that context, again, the neighbor dispute, and this is another thing that becomes a problem in these neighbor disputes, is sometimes they're just anonymous calls, right?
Sure.
So was it somebody walking around behind there and just randomly reports it, or is it the neighbor who says, hey, this pirate ship is bothering me and it's too close?
Yeah. And the other thing in this specific, I think in the article, the first article, it said that it took several months for him to get this done. So again, we don't know. I don't think we know of the costs associated, but several months of one's time, the materials or whatever. It's a significant endeavor, and then a significant, like I said, it took a year eventually for them to be in compliance with municipal bylaws. So this isn't like, these disputes or these neighbor issues, they're not just stressful, they can be financially crippling.
Yeah, and both, again, I stress from a legal fee perspective if you're trying to challenge, and also from just a financial money sink into something like this where he's almost pot committed. He's built this thing, he has all the materials, it's all put together, and then he's got to take it apart and put it back together.
Yeah.
Not to mention, like you said, a year of back and forth with the city, with whoever he needs to work with there, to make sure that he's not violating any further bylaws and making sure that it's up to code and making sure that the pool is safe for occupancy and all of those things, right?
Exactly.
And so those are things that you work with the city with. If you're not sure, you can get counsel. I mean, there's lawyers that handle these types of issues for sure. And that's when you find yourself in that situation, it's, if you are having trouble, you should seek legal assistance, because you have invested, like this gentleman, a ton of money into something. It could be just as simple as a lawyer getting involved and guiding you through and not adding too much expense, but at least getting you to the end result.
Or simply just advising you to contact your municipality and discuss with the bylaw officer, or just discuss with whomever picks up the phone, what are the bylaws associated with building something in my backyard, building a fence, these types of things, which gets to our next point.
That's true, yeah. So our third
fences.
one that we wanted to look at today is another Toronto case from August of this year.
Yep.
And that one truly is your typical fence dispute. So in this case, and again, the link will be provided below, the neighbors thought they had come to an agreement over where this fence was going to be. And for those of you who don't know, there's a Line Fences Act, which in doing the research for this episode, we discovered. And that Line Fences Act is applicable across the board in Ontario, and there's Line Fences Acts in different provinces. Of course, we're focusing on Ontario law. And in Ontario, that act governs fence disputes, and you have to work with your local municipality, who will have an application process to get there. So, of course, we'll get into that more in episode 5. But for right now's purposes, this case, the parties had what they thought was an accord. Turns out they didn't. And then one of the neighbors just went ahead anyway.
Yeah, that's what it was. There was a fence that one of the property owners thought the fence needed to be reconstructed or at least fixed up. The other neighbor, what their accounts was, is that they disagreed. The one property owner decided, all right, rips the fence apart, rebuilds it, and then goes, well, you're responsible for some of the costs associated with that.
And that's, I think, where you see a lot of the disputes arise.
That's a big part of the disputes.
Dilapidated fences.
Yep.
Somebody takes it upon themselves to redo it, but because the way fences work, usually they're on the boundary line, and so parties assume that the other neighbor ought to pay their share of this fence, because of course both parties get the benefit of the fence.
What's also important is that a lot of neighbors think the other neighbor's also responsible for part of the cost. If it's a fence, it's a shared expense. Well, that's not inherently a neighbor's responsibility, and that a lot of people I think sort of get that misconstrued, saying, well, if there's a fence and there's an issue with the fence, we share the costs. Unless you come to an agreement, if you take it upon yourself to reconstruct a fence, it may be completely at your cost.
Yeah. Well, and that's what happens. And then they got to sue in small claims court to try to recover the monies they spent if they believe truly that they're right. And so that's one of the remedies we'll be talking about in the next episode, is your right of action in small claims court, the Line Fences Act, and those other things. So I think at this point we can take a break, and we'll get back into it after a word from our sponsor.
This episode of Off the Cuff is brought to you by Weaver Simmons LLP, Northern Ontario's largest full-service law firm with over 30 lawyers and 60 support staff. For over 90 years, the law firm of Weaver Simmons has proudly served the interests of Northern Ontario residents and has built its reputation based on exceptional services to its clients. For more information about the firm, please visit www.weaversimmons.com. The link is provided in the description below.
Welcome back. We'd first like to say that we're not picking on Toronto. We just happen to have picked 3 instances of neighbor disputes that are in the GTA. We love Toronto. We're not picking on them. This happens everywhere across the province. So we just wanted to say, first and foremost, we're not picking on our province's capital. We love Toronto. Go Jays, go!
Huge Jays fans.
Huge Jays fans.
Next episode, we're going to get into, I had already talked about this a little bit earlier, the Line Fences Act, and the remedies that you can, look for when you have these disputes. So you have the Line Fences Act as a potential option if you are dealing with a fence dispute. You'll find yourself probably in a small claims court setting. We'll talk about that in the next episode. Yep. There's monetary limits in the small claims court, and then maybe you'll find yourself in the Superior Court, and we'll just touch on that a little bit. And also we found some really good cases that really demonstrate how far neighbors can go.
Yeah, it really demonstrates just when these disputes become really litigious, all-consuming, and almost wars, like full-on
wild. It's
instances.
like the Wild West sometimes,
right?
Like
where
chickens, roosters.
We're literally going to talk about chicken, roosters, rodents,
outdoor televisions.
Yeah, it's
I don't even know.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's awesome.
I love it.
Let's talk about it then.
Okay. Well, if you want to hear about those things, of course, join us on our next episode. And we want to thank you, our viewers, our listeners, being with us today, for all the, likes and subscribes and positive feedback we've gotten. We love you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year's.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily represent those of Weaver Simmons. The contents of this podcast are strictly for informational purposes and not to be construed in any way as legal advice. If you have an issue that you believe requires legal advice, we suggest you contact a lawyer, and if you do not have the financial means to do so, contact Legal Aid Ontario or the Law Society of Ontario. The links are provided in the description below.
Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast.
Listen, do what you gotta do to keep us around, okay?